Quick side note, I want to thank the Academy for not seeing Jupiter ascending and seeing that I was good in the theory of everything. As about now, it's about 6 weeks until Furious 7 comes out. So for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to watch and review all the previous 6 Fast and Furious movies. There will be some spoilers in this movie because I can't really talk about this movie without going into detail. And at this point, this movie has been out for about 15 years, so if you haven't seen it by now, then short answer, go watch The Fast and the Furious. So The Fast and the Furious came out in 2001. I remember my first introduction to this movie was when Too Fast, Too Furious came out. All my friends at the time were talking about it. It was like, have you seen this movie, Fast and Furious? Too Fast and Furious is going to be awesome, dude. And I was like, what's that? And so me and my dad, we rented the first Fast and the Furious from Blockbuster. After I watched it, I, for some reason, fell in love with it. Then I also saw Too Fast, Too Furious, and that's a review for another day. But the actual story is about Brian O'Connor, played by Paul Walker. God rest his soul. He's a street racer, he's also a mechanic, and he tries to befriend Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel. The first time you really see those two on screen together, they kind of don't get along, but the second time, to me, that is the true introduction of them as characters. Dominic Toretto, he is the king of the street racing world. He's the best in his streets, he's the best of the city, he's like the best of the best. But then Brian comes along, he wants to race Dominic Toretto and Ja Rule pre-dead career by 50 Cent. Now that first race pretty much sets the tone for not only the movie, but for the whole series. Because when you watch these films, you'll think it's Fast and the Furious. It's all about fast cars, beautiful women, Vin Diesel. But you watch that first race and it is really cool just seeing Vin Diesel just burning rubber, and it's real funny seeing Brian struggle to try to beat Dominic Toretto. He's just struggling and he blew off most of his NOS, not double clutching like he should. Why do I talk like I think I know everything about cars and street racing? But he tries to beat Dom, but he can't because Dom is just that awesome of a racer. After the race, Dom pretty much talks shit to Brian for a while until the cops come. Dom tries to escape and he almost gets ran over by the cops, but then Brian comes along and saves him. Now at that moment, to me, that is when their relationship really starts to become like this. And you see those two grow as characters as the film goes along. By the end of the night, Dom tells Brian, you know you own your 10-second car, right? That is because while they were trying to escape the authorities, they went into the territory of Johnny Train. Now, Dom and Johnny Train, they're not really on good terms because, as Dom said in the movie, it was a business deal went wrong and he made the mistake of sleeping with his sister. The next day, Brian gets stopped by the cops. But why? Well, in that moment, we learned that Brian O'Connor is an undercover cop. To me, this is where the story took a turn for the better. Brian O'Connor is an LAPD cop sent undercover to infiltrate the local LA illegal street racing scene, so he can apprehend the truck hijackers led by Dominic Toretto. Now this right here is what everybody has a problem with, and that is because people compare this movie to the movie Point Break. And that's because it is almost, or if anything, is a remake or ripoff of the movie Point Break. Now I've never seen Point Break, but eventually sometime this year I may watch it because they made a Point Break remake that comes out this year. But back to The Fast and the Furious. To me, this movie works because this movie is essentially about family and loyalty. Throughout the whole movie, Brian tries to bend the blame on Johnny Train for the truck hijackings. And he does it because he's gotten so acquainted with Dom and his family that he really doesn't want to put him in. Because he thinks Dom is just too controlled to be doing stuff like that, but in reality he isn't, and Dom's actually crazier than you really think he is. Halfway through the movie, Dom reveals that he beat a man half to death with a wrench. And he had to spend some jail time for that, and he is not going back. He refuses to go back. Dom and his family is the only real family that Brian has. Especially since throughout the whole movie, Brian has been falling in love with Mia. Which brings me to my next point. Among Brian and Dominic being good characters, you also got the supporting characters. You got Mia Toretto, played by Jordana Brewster. She is Dom's kid sister. She is aware of Dom's street racing life, and she is aware of all Dom's illegal troubles. But among that, she also forms a relationship with Brian. And she's been feeling him from the get-go. Like Brian and Mia, they're this good pair that just works. But among that, you got Vince. Who is really not feeling this. Like that scene at the convenience store. Vince sees Brian macking on Mia, and he is not happy with that, and he picks a fight with Brian. But Vince, as a character, he's the knucklehead character And halfway through the film, he figures out that Brian is a cop. Now, personally and generally speaking, I do not like knucklehead characters because knucklehead characters, they're written to do stupid shit. But in this movie, this is an exception because he's a knucklehead that actually figures everything out. He may seem like a knucklehead, but he's actually really smarter than he thinks, and there's a reason he's not a big fan of Brian. And he can see through all Brian's BS. You also got Ja Rule in the movie. His little cameo in the movie wasn't bad, especially at the end when that girl embarrassed him. Other cops in this movie are really good. Like, you got Buffalo Bill himself from Silence of the Lambs, Ted Levine. He plays one of the head cops. And near the end of the movie, he tries to talk some sense into Brian. He's like, alright, Brian, you really gotta get with it, man. Like, there are plenty of films out there, but you really gotta bring Dom in, alright? I understand, like, they're like family to you, but you also gotta realize what he has done. Like, come on, bruh. The other three members of the crew, I almost forgot about Michelle Rodriguez, who plays Letty. Letty is Dom's girlfriend in the movie. She's this no-nonsense girl. She loves Dom. She is a ride-or-die chick. She will stay with Dom till the end. Of all the crew members, I'd probably say Leon, he's the most useless, and they don't really do much with him after this movie. But Jesse, he's really good with cars. He's like one of the best. He crafted all of Dom and Brian's cars, and he has ADD, and cars is his way of helping them calm down. Now, the last hour of the movie is my favorite. First, it starts out in Race Wars, where Jesse tries to race Johnny Train, but then he loses, and so Jesse just drives off. And then Johnny's not happy with that, so he comes at Dom. Dom just shrugs him off because someone put a warrant out on Johnny. Dom denies it, but in reality, it was Brian who put the warrant out on him. Later on after that, Dom and his crew leave to do one last hijacking. So then after that, Brian has no choice but to reveal to Mia that he is a cop and that they need to go stop him because the trucks, after all the hijackings that Dom and his crew have done, the trucks, they are now loaded with guns now. And if anyone tries to jack them, they are shooting. And so Brian's like, alright Mia, look, I'm a cop and I know I love you, everything I've said about you is true, but we really need to go because these truckers, they're not going to be so passive this time around. And so they go, and when Dom and his crew try to hijack a truck, they are in for a rude awakening. This truck did have a gun on him. Vince is on the truck trying to get down, but the truck driver shot Vince, and so they're struggling, and luckily Brian and Mia, they go to help them, they get Vince down, they're safe. Vince needs to get to a hospital immediately. First off, that whole scene where they're on the truck and try to jack it and trying to get Vince down, to me, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because that whole scene is just intense. But my next favorite scene is also really intense, and it's when Brian reveals who he is. The second Brian says, hello, this is Junior Officer Brian O'Connor. After Brian says that, Vin Diesel looks up and he just looks at him, and without no dialogue or anything, and the music queuing up, you could just feel what Vin Diesel was feeling in that moment, and you know what Vin Diesel was feeling in that very moment. Like, the second Brian revealed that he's a cop, Dom, he is beyond pissed. He is furious. No pun intended, though. Like, I love scenes like that, where it's just no dialogue, but they just have to sit there and act. And you just, with no... I'm sorry, it's just, I love scenes like that, where there's just no dialogue, and they just have to use their face, they just have to sit there and act. So anyways, Vince does get help. Dom and the rest, they all go back to their house. Brian goes to Dom's house to try to stop him, but then Johnny comes by and performs a drive-by and ultimately kills Jesse. Brian and Dom, they go after him, and he's eventually killed. But then Brian and Dom, they have a drag race. That drag race, it was another good particular scene when the train has to come and then they cross. Like, that was really intense. But then next thing you know, boom! Dom is not watching where he's going. He runs into this truck and then his car just flips over and crashes. Brian goes to see if he's okay, and Dom is okay. Now this next part right here, like I've said, there are a lot of favorite moments in this movie, but this right here, this is my absolute favorite moment in this scene, because again, I like scenes right there where there's no dialogue. Well, there's very little dialogue in this scene, but it just conveys... I'm sorry, let me just explain, alright? Alright, so as you know, Dom, he's okay, but then they hear the sirens coming. And Dom is just standing there, he's like, crap, I'm going to jail. And so Dom looks at Brian looks at Dom, they keep looking at each other, they glance at each other for a while. And then eventually, Brian gives Dom his keys. Dom looks down and is like, what? He's like, in that moment, Brian lets Dom go, because in that very scene, we see what Brian is choosing. And he is sticking with his loyalties to Dom. And with the very little dialogue, and hell, the last dialogue in the movie, Dom asks, sure you know what you're doing? And then Brian says, I owe you a 10-second car. And then Dom nods his head, he walks off with Brian's car and then drives off. And then Brian turns around and walks away, and I just love how that scene just ends. He just walks away, then it starts to slow down, and then walks away, and then boom! End credits. That's how you hook them. Like to me, I like that scene because I thought that it wrapped up the movie in a nice bow right there. Like that was the perfect way to end the movie. This movie as a whole is one of the best of the series because it's the movie that started it all. It establishes the series, it establishes the characters. It is the blueprint of the series. This movie is not just about street racing. People say that, but it's really not just about street racing. This movie is pretty much a crime drama. And the fact that there's cars in it, that is a tool to tell the story of this crime drama. And yes, you could also argue that this movie is also a ripoff of Point Break. People have said that plenty of times or whatever, but quite frankly, I don't care. You could say that this is the Point Break for the modern age, or last modern age. I feel like this is a really good story, and the cool thing about this is it's not entirely a Point Break remake throughout the series. You grow, but the story does evolve, and the characters do grow, and it transcends past the first movie, and you gotta give them credit for that. So in the end, I will always have a spot in my heart for the first Fast and the Furious movie. In the end, even though the series does get better in time, I will always have a spot in my heart for the first Fast and the Furious movie because, again, it's the first movie. It's the one that started it all. And I'll even go as far as saying, like, the first Fast and the Furious movie is one of my top 10 of all time. But right now, I'm conflicted, because, like, do I give this movie an A++ because it's nostalgic, or do I judge this movie as a movie and give it the grade that it really deserves? Because some people like it, some people don't. Some people say it's mediocre. So I decided I'm just going to do both. As a movie, I will say this movie is about an A- for full price. But however, I have given the first Fast and the Furious an A++. Now if I don't do it on video, that would pretty much mean I don't have the balls to do so. So I give the Fast and the Furious an A++. Well, that was pretty fun. Can't wait to do the next couple of movies, as well as Marvel movies. That's it for the day. Like what you see, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my other channel. The links are in the description below. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, and Instagram. And be sure to check out my website. Peace.